And that theme of adaptation seems key, running through it all.
Yeah, like Amy Grant having to physically... Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that cuts through complex source material so you don't have to.
Today, we're looking at something often working just beneath the surface of public life and huge success.
Yeah, we're talking about personal belief, spiritual practice. How does it actually function for people constantly in the spotlight?
Well, we've been digging into a really interesting source, Witness to Belief, Faith in Public Life. It's basically a collection of interviews by Levenson.
Not just anyone. 12 very high-profile people.
Exactly, and from totally different worlds. We've got politics, science, entertainment, the military. It's quite a mix.
So for this deep dive, our mission is to get beyond the usual headlines. We want to pull out concrete examples.
Right. How do figures like, say, Condoleezza Rice or Denzel Washington,
Francis Collins, the geneticist, Admiral McRaven,
how do they actually weave their faith into their careers, their successes, and maybe more importantly, their struggles?
It's a really diverse lineup. And the aim here isn't about judging their beliefs, is it?
No, not at all. It's about seeing how belief operates, in the background.
Yeah.
How does it shape decisions? How does it sustain them when things get tough? What can we learn from how they live it out?
Okay, let's unpack this.
Where should we start?
I think maybe with the most raw human part of it all, how faith holds up or how it's sustained when people face really profound personal challenges, loss, criticism, doubt even.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because the source material really emphasizes the lived reality. It's not abstract theology.
It's faith as like a practical tool almost.
Kind of a survival mechanism, yeah, when everything else seems to fall apart.
There's one story in there that really hits hard, Brit Hume.
Oh, yeah.
He talks very openly about losing his son to suicide. I mean, devastating doesn't even cover it. He uses this phrase. He says it was like an amputation.
But that analogy is just, it tells you everything, doesn't it? Permanent loss, not something you just get over.
So how did his faith feature in something like that? The book describes it as...
Yeah, that's the word used. It helped him orient himself towards God's love, towards some sense of purpose, even when faced with something that feels utterly meaningless and bleak.
So less about answers maybe, and more about a direction, a place to turn.
Exactly, a framework, however difficult, to try and situate that immense suffering rather than just being completely lost in it.
That resonates. It's not a magic one, but maybe a foundation. And there are other examples of struggle. Jim Nance, the sportscaster, his father's Alzheimer's diagnosis.
Right, another kind of long-term, painful journey. And for him, the source says, faith became about acceptance.
Through prayer.
Through sustained prayer and reflection, yeah. Not necessarily praying for a cure that wasn't coming, but praying for the strength to accept the reality of his father's decline.
A tool for coping then.
And surrender, in a way. Learning to deal with what you can't change.
Then there's Amy Grant. Her story is fascinating because it's about adaptation after a physical change.
Yeah, the brain injury. It forced her to change how she practiced her faith.
She said she couldn't recite scripture anymore the way she used to.
But she could sing it.
Which tells you what about belief itself.
Well, it shows it's not this rigid, fixed thing, right? It has to be flexible. It has to adapt when your own physical or neurological reality changes. It's incredibly resilient.
And it really humanizes these big names. You see the how they grapple with suffering, find purpose. It's not just about their achievements.
Definitely. It's about the internal toolkit they use.
Okay, so moving from that very personal space, let's talk about faith and their public roles, their jobs.
Right. How does belief guide decisions when you're, say, a leader making choices that impact tons of people?
This is where the military and political figures come in. Admiral William McRaven, for instance.
His perspective is really striking. He talks openly about the moral weight of military command.
The burden of knowing that sometimes even necessary actions can feel wrong or cause harm.
Exactly. He acknowledges that burden. He even talks about the inevitability of doing wrong and the complexities of conflict.
And faith comes in how? The source says he relies on prayer.
Yes, specifically asking for God's forgiveness for the errors he knows are almost unavoidable in that role.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not about praying for victory. It's about praying for forgiveness for the cost of command.
It's a kind of spiritual preparedness for moral debt. It shows a really complex understanding of leadership and its costs.
It's a profound insight, but let me push back slightly here. These are public figures. They know they're being interviewed for a book, like Denzel Washington asking for prayer before and after his interview. That's powerful, sure.
Right.
But is it the whole picture? Are we seeing the raw, messy struggle or a more polished version for public consumption?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's a fair one. Washington's request absolutely shows how central his faith is, even in a very public secular space. But yes, we have to assume these are testimonies given with an awareness of public image. We're likely seeing the functional operative faith. Maybe not always the faith that's full of doubt or deep uncertainty. We'll get to limitations later, but it's a key point.
Still, that tension itself is interesting. The pull between massive fame, achievement, and trying to stay grounded internally.
Right. Faith acting as a counterweight, maybe, against ego.
Could be. Keeping some kind of internal compass when the world's shouting your name.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what the book seems to show is that for these individuals, belief provides a kind of internal accountability, something separate from public opinion or success metrics.
Okay, that makes sense. We've touched on personal struggle, public roles. Now for a potentially trickier area, faith and science.
Ah, yes. The supposed conflict zone.
Right. Can rigorous science and deep spiritual belief actually coexist in the same person doing serious work?
Well, the interviews with Francis Collins and Jane Goodall directly challenge that idea of an inherent conflict.
Collins, the geneticist who led the Human Genome Project. Goodall, the primatologist. Icons in their fields.
And both talk about how their spiritual life interfaces with their scientific work. Not in opposition, but maybe in parallel. Or even synergistically.
How so? Does faith limit their science? Does Collins look at the genome and say, okay, can't investigate that because it conflicts with my beliefs?
The sources suggest no. Quite the opposite, actually. Collins seems to view the sheer complexity and elegance of the genome not as evidence against a creator, but as a revelation of God's creativity.
So the science deepeneth the awe, maybe.
Something like that. And Goodall connects her spiritual sense to the profound beauty and intricacy of the natural world she studies. For them, it seems faith provides a framework for the wonder that science reveals.
Rather than faith just being an explanation for things science can't yet explain.
Exactly. It's not a God of the gaps approach. It's more like faith gives context to the whole picture.
It sounds like their belief systems are robust enough to handle the complexity, the ambiguity, the unanswered questions in science.
And it shows belief isn't one size fits all, right? Collins' path is different from Goodall's, but they both demonstrate that deep faith and demanding science can coexist within the same person.
Which is a key insight for you, the listener. It counters that simple narrative of conflict and shows how multi-layered these leaders' perspectives really are, even in fields we often think of as purely rational.
Definitely.
All right, so we've looked at faith through suffering, through leadership, through science. Let's pull back. What's the main takeaway from witness to belief? What are its core strengths, but also, let's be critical, its nuances or limitations?
I think the biggest strength is how accessible and concrete it is. It's conversational. It's not dense theology.
It gives you stories, real examples.
Exactly. Nance praying, Grant singing scripture, these small daily acts of faith, not just grand pronouncements. It's a collection of testimonies about living with integrity.
But going back to that earlier point about public figures, the polish, what are the limitations we should keep in mind?
Well, the main thing critics point out, and it seems fair, is that it doesn't really dig deep into doubt or skepticism or times when faith might have failed someone.
Because these are largely success stories, in a way. People who have maintained faith.
Precisely. It's descriptive, showcasing faith working positively. It's not really a critical examination. The interviewees are presenting their faith, likely emphasizing the aspects that have sustained them.
So we get the how it works when it is working, but maybe less of the struggle to make it work, or what happens when it doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It sometimes hints at deeper struggles, but because of the format and the subjects, it tends to stay on, let's say, safer ground. It's not meant to be a deep theological dive or a study of spiritual crisis.
It has a specific purpose then, showing faith in action in public life.
Correct. And for that purpose, it's quite effective. Just important to know what it is and what it isn't.
So what does this all mean?
At the end of the day, witness to belief gives you a really efficient way to understand how a diverse group of successful people uses faith to navigate big questions of purpose, handle suffering, and try to maintain integrity.
It shows that inner conviction, whatever form it takes, can be a powerful anchor. often unseen, but shaping decisions and endurance.
And that theme of adaptation seems key, running through it all.
Yeah, like Amy Grant having to physically adapt her practice, or McRaven adapting his spiritual focus to deal with the moral ambiguities of command. They're all adjusting to maintain integrity under intense pressure.
Which leads us to a final thought, something for you to maybe chew on after this deep dive.
Okay, let's hear it.
Given what we've seen, the need for spiritual adaptation like Grant's, and the reality of moral error like McRaven, acknowledges what's actually the hardest part of keeping your integrity when you're under that kind of intense public or professional spotlight.
Is it fighting the ego that comes with success?
Or is it finding a moral compass when you know you'll sometimes have to make flawed choices?
Or is it just making sure your deepest convictions can actually bend and adapt when your whole reality shifts?
Something to think about. How do you hold on to your core under pressure, especially when the pressure demands change?
Grab Witness to Belief by Russell J. Levenson Jr. Now on sale, $19.95. Don't miss this chance and build good habits and achieve remarkable results. Buy now, today.
Like and subscribe for more Bookhaven podcasts.